Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I'm G, and
I'm D.
we have a action-packed show for you tonight. We've got a lot of topics that we're going to be discussing, and a lot of scary things going on around the country right now. But we're going to start with last night's vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence. So, D, why don't you give us your thoughts first off, and what you thought about how the debate went?
Yeah, I thought it went about like I expected it to. Senator Harris was on top of her game. You could see her prosecutorial skills. She had a lot of great comebacks, a lot of great one-liners. Mike Pence played his typical "aw shucks" kind of,
Right.
softer version of dictator, as opposed to Trump's performance the week before. I mean, there's a lot more civility. Pence did interrupt, and he did speak longer than he was supposed to, which was a violation of the rules. But all in all, a lot more civil type of debate. My overall impression is Harris was the winner because I felt like that she articulated the reasons for Joe Biden better than Pence did. I thought we can get into some of the particulars here in a second after we hear your overview. But the other thing that I thought was interesting was that Mike Pence's tone, considering there was a female moderator and he was debating a female candidate, he came across pretty condescending. Came across there was some of the women that I watched the debate with that their remarks were that any woman who's worked in corporate America has dealt with somebody like Mike Pence that wants to talk over them and interrupt them. And so I don't think it changed the outcome of the election either way. I do think Harris was the clear winner. I think our second place winner in my mind was the fly that landed on Mike Pence's head.
Right. That thing stayed up there for a long time.
It really did. There's a lot of internet memes about what was attracted to it, and the Biden campaign had a phenomenal fundraiser with the fly swatters that they sold. But I didn't think Pence was pretty low energy. There were times where I think he wanted to go back to at least 2016, if not before that, and act like the last 4 years haven't happened.
Right.
He wanted to relitigate the H1N1 crisis as opposed to the pandemic that's happened on his watch that he's the head of the task force over. And so I just thought he didn't have a lot of good answers. And we can talk in a second, but I want to get your thoughts before we go into some of the particulars. What do you think overall?
Well, I thought it wasn't much better than the first debate, to be honest with you. I thought it was a little bit more civil, but I thought Pence was a big bully, just like his boss. I thought Senator Harris was very composed. I thought she carried herself very well. I think she maintained her composure and did the best she could. I saw a report from The Hill that basically said they didn't give anybody the debate win per se, but what they did do was say that each side got out of it what they needed to get out of it. So Kamala needed to just not basically screw up and keep the momentum going. And Pence needed to do something to kind of shore up the base and, if you will, staunch the bleeding that's been going on the last few days with, Trump having COVID and all that entails. So
yeah, I do think the only pushback I'll give on that report from The Hill is that I agree with the part about Senator Harris that this is her first debate to really introduce herself to the national audience.
Right.
I mean, she was in the Democratic primary, obviously, and got a lot of exposure, but that's typically, you're only going to get politicos like you and me that want to watch those things consistently. So first time for a national audience. So I thought she did a great job introducing herself there. She did what she needed to do. Like you said, no big faux pas or anything like that. I do think that Pence, besides just staunching the bleeding, I think he needed to do something that would attract at least some percentage of the suburban white vote that's fleeing away from Trump, especially white women. And he didn't do anything last night to endear himself to women at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think any votes were changed, like you said. I don't think this, if anything, I think some people that might have sat out on either side were will now become engaged and go ahead and vote. I did want to say that I kind of felt sorry for the moderator, Susan Page. She I think she did the best job that she could, given the tools that she had at her disposal. But aside from like standing up and banging your hand on the table, or basically saying you're going to walk away and cut off the debate, which I don't know who would get vilified if you did that, but
Right.
there's not a lot of avenues open to a moderator when the debate goes south like these two have.
Yeah, unless if they're not going to give them a button to cut off the microphone, or we'll talk in a second about the future debate, but unless it was a virtual setting where they could mute one of the speakers or something like that. Short of those things, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Other than I think you could probably try to castigate Pence a little bit more than Trump, because it seems like the times where almost called her vice president, but Senator Harris, the times where she spoke out to him and said, I'm speaking, he tended to go ahead and respect that. And when he was called out on it, I thought there were a couple of missed chances on both sides. The big miss for me on the two big misses on the Republican side was the fact that Mike Pence, I didn't think his statement about the COVID crisis and pandemic was, that's going to be in commercials if it's not already, where he said President Trump is, I could see the Lincoln Project already producing, where he said President Trump has had since the beginning of this pandemic, had the health of the American people at the forefront, or whatever the exact quote was. But basically it's like, dude, come on.
Because
he didn't push for a mask mandate. He wouldn't wear a mask, and he even contracted the disease. So I don't really see how you can say that he had rallies and wants to have more rallies where people aren't required to wear a mask. So I thought that was a big mistake there. Also, they continue to talk about they don't have a good answer on healthcare because they don't have a plan. And it just boggles my mind that even in the budgeting process in Congress, the president always proposes a budget that has their priorities in it. Even when they know it's dead on arrival, they're always going to propose a budget. So you would think after 4 years that they would at least have a plan if they were serious about reforming healthcare, but they're not.
They're not. No, they just want to go back how it was and get rid of this, what they say is an abomination in Obamacare, even though it's the same plan that Mitt Romney, took from the Heritage Foundation and implemented in Massachusetts. It's on the same plan.
Today's Republican Party, the Heritage Foundation, is considered Bolsheviks. So so those were the two big things there. They didn't have Pence didn't have an answer on a lot of things. I thought the big one, which moving into the future debates, that Biden needs to have a stronger answer on, and the last two debates, neither Biden nor Senator Harris have had good answers on, was the question about packing the courts. And they've just evaded the question, which I understand part of it, but I think there's a better way to answer it that would shore it up. And if I was them, my answer would be something along the lines of, let's see what the Republicans do. If the Republicans jam this SCOTUS seat through, then we'll have to talk about reforming the justice system, and that's for the next Congress to determine. We've got an election right now. Once the next Congress is elected, they can make the decisions about that in consultation with us once we're in the Oval. But until then, we're not going to talk about hypotheticals. Same thing. Go ahead.
I think that's a good answer. I doubt they'll ever use it, because I saw some polling that said 62% of the American electorate does not want them to pack the court. Of course, polls change by the day. So, the day after the election, it could be 78% want them to.
It's the same thing when Trump tried to push in the first debate, and he will in the next debates if there are any. Why don't you release? I've released my list. I've released my list of people I'm going to choose from. Why won't you release your list? Biden's got to be ready for that question. And to me, it's a simple answer on that one too. Is we only have one president at a time. I'm not president yet. Once I'm president, and once there's a vacancy that I'm to fill, at that point, I'll talk about who's going to be there. I can tell you, here's what I'd look for, but I'm not going to be bound by some kind of interest group like you are. I'm not going
Right.
to have some group write a list for me. I'm going to make the choice because I'm going to be the commander in chief.
Yeah, that's a good answer. A couple things that I thought about the debate too was I don't understand why you go on a debate and you're so unprepared that you just blatantly lie, and when you lie, it's easily fact checked. So specifically, I'm talking about we were talking about climate change, and Pence said there's no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago. Well, that's easily fact checked. So 100 years ago, there were 5 hurricanes. As of today, there's been 17. And so that's definitely an increase. And so I just don't understand how you could do that. And then I also thought that Senator Harris really got in probably her best zinger of the night when she turned to Pence and said, "So you want to talk a little history? Well, let's take it all the way." And she basically slapped him with President Lincoln, the very founder of their party, and how he left a seat vacant until after the election. So
Yeah.
Supreme Court
We've
seat.
we've talked about the Supreme Court a little bit, but that's one to that they've got to be ready for that in the next debate and have a strong answer on that. And
Right.
as we've said, I would look at Donald Trump and say, tell me what the Constitution says about how many justices should be on the Supreme Court.
Right.
He's not going to know what the answer to that, no more than he's going to know what John 3:16 says.
Right.
He's not going to read he hasn't read the Bible, he hasn't read the Constitution, and he's not going to know the fact that it simply is not. It doesn't say in the Constitution. It doesn't delineate how many seats should be on. And there's been times throughout history where the number has fluctuated. And
Oh yeah, it's
strong
been as
chance
high as 11
yeah,
and as low as 6.
yeah.
So
All right, that's a really good recap of where we are after the debate. Let's talk about, we've got 2 more debates on the calendar. We've got supposed to be next Thursday, October 15th, and then the following Thursday, October 22nd. The Commission on Presidential Debates came out with a finding today that they said, or a ruling that they said, the one on the 15th, the debate will be held virtually due to the fact that one of the participants, I don't know which one, Donald J. Trump, has been diagnosed with coronavirus COVID-19. And therefore, due to safety measures, they thought it'd be best to have the debate virtual, the virtual town hall on the 15th.
right.
Tell us, shockingly, what DJT decided about that.
Well, Trump pushed back a little bit. He offered to have the debates a week later, and Biden pushed back on that and said, you don't get to decide the debate dates. The commission does that. And then Trump basically said, well, I'm not doing a virtual. So as we've talked about on our podcast before, I think that we've seen the last of the debates. We saw one presidential, one VP, and I don't think we're going to see any more until the election.
That's I lean that way as well. I think Trump did so poorly in the first debate. He's scared of another debate.
Yep.
He doesn't like being in a room that's not full of people who are adoring to him. So he's even said, instead of a virtual debate, he called that a waste of time. He said he's going to have a rally that day on the 15th instead.
Right.
Which the White House medical office will not release when he was diagnosed with COVID. As far as we know, it was last Thursday, which would put the 15th right at a 14-day window, which is when he means he still should be quarantined at that point.
Well, he just announced that starting Saturday, he's going to be cleared to resume in-person rallies. So I think what we clearly see here is that the medical community is not driving this train. This train is being driven by Donald J. Trump. And I'll go on record right now as saying, I firmly believe this is all a hoax. I don't think Trump ever had COVID. I think it was a plan for him to play on the sympathy vote, to try and get people to vote for him because, oh my gosh, now he's sick. And it also was a way for him to get out of, to strategize to get out of the debates. That's what I firmly think. I don't think the guy was ever sick. And unless I see a picture of him on a ventilator or, laying in a hospital bed getting treatment, which we haven't seen any of that, I'll never believe the guy actually had the disease.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will tell you this: when he went up the stairs, he was breathing pretty hard, but he also is a heavy dude. So,
Yeah, he's like 400 pounds. So,
well, I thought he said he weighed 230.
yeah, there's no way he's 230. No way.
Yeah, I think
He
if
might
that's
have those. He might have dyslexia and have those numbers reversed. It might be 320, but he's
yeah,
definitely over 300 pounds.
he I will tell you this, and not shockingly so, if that's the case, he misplayed that hand as well.
Yeah, firmly, I'm with you there. I think it's totally backfired. I think he's deeper in the hole. We see if the polls hold and keep going like they're going, we are headed for a blue tsunami like we've never seen in my lifetime.
I will say this, that there were some campaign insiders that were quoted. Now, campaign insiders, you never know, is that the person working at the cash bar, or is that an actual advisor, because it's anonymous. But some sources with the Washington Post and New York Times, so they're probably pretty valid sources, said that they had hoped and they had advised him to use this as a chance to pivot, use it as a way to say, now that I've had the disease, I recognize how devastating it's been. I empathize with the family, but he doesn't have an empathetic bone in his body.
No, in fact, he said it was a godsend that he got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will also tell you that there were pollsters in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina that had reported that after he had been diagnosed, that his poll numbers were dropping by the hour.
Oh wow, I didn't see that.
So there's a lot of buzz on the ground right now, and we're starting to see some pretty strong distance.
I did see, as you and I were talking off air, I did see that Biden now has about a 5-point lead in Florida. So, just last week that was about 1.5. So, that state's starting to open up, which we'll have to watch that in the coming weeks to see what DeSantis does to minimize the damage for Trump down there.
Absolutely. So I think we're both in agreement that it's rather doubtful that we're going to see full debates. Now, Biden did, before we came on air tonight, Biden did put out a statement, or he was doing a press junket. They're doing a bus tour of Arizona right now, which is pretty interesting that the Democratic candidates in Arizona shows how. We'll talk about the debate here in a second. But he did say, which I think is the smart move, because initially he kind of waffled a little bit this morning. I don't think he was expecting Trump to turn down the debate, because if anybody needs the debate right now, it's Trump.
Right.
For Trump to be able to turn this around, he needs a national audience and he needs something big to happen. So he's the one who needs the debate way more than Biden does. But he did have an answer tonight, which was a lot better, because this morning he said he didn't know, he wasn't sure what would happen. He wanted to see, he wasn't sure what Trump had said. But as the campaigns negotiated, and he said tonight, if Trump doesn't show up on the 15th, I'm still showing up. I'll take the full hour and a half. I'll take all questions from the attendees, and that's the right answer.
Yeah, which is, I think that's what he ought to do. I did hear one thing that took me back a little bit today. I heard a radio report that referred to Arizona as a swing state.
Yep.
And just checking the polls, currently it looks like Biden has almost a 4.5-point lead in Arizona, which, man, that does not bode well for Trump's reelection chances.
No, it sure doesn't. So speaking of Arizona, why don't we go, let's see, about, I think it was about 2-3 nights ago, they had and it's the only scheduled debate of the Senate campaign, Mark Kelly versus Martha McSally. We've talked about this race before on the podcast, but some interesting things during that debate. Kelly, the last poll numbers, I think he was up between 6 and 8 points, somewhere in there.
Well, Ipsos has him up. A poll that came out yesterday, they have him up by 10.
There you go.
Latino Decisions has him up by 5. That's the lowest. Data Orbital has him up by 6. High Ground Inc. has him up by 7. And Change Research has him up by 8. So
Well, like I said, between 6 and 8, we could have saved that last minute there, G-Man.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I'm a numbers guy.
I know you are. I know you are. So, and you love when you can fact check me. I know it.
Right.
But the debate was an interesting debate for a lot of things. I mean, we've talked about Martha McSally before. She ran for the Senate against Kristen Sinema and lost, and then was appointed to John McCain's seat, and then now she's losing again. So it doesn't seem to me like she's a very popular candidate across the state.
Yeah,
Not very well liked.
As they say in Indiana Jones, the governor chose poorly.
Yes, I do believe that's the case. Interesting development in that debate, though. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Well, actually, I didn't see the debate, so I'd rather defer to you on that. You know a little bit more about that than I do.
All right. Basically, what happened was this was the beginning, the first fissure that I've seen anyway in the Senate races, other than a little bit of milquetoast from Susan Collins, was the first time that I've seen a Republican candidate start to really push away from Trump.
Right.
She was asked, I think, 3 to 4 times directly, are you proud of your support for Donald Trump? That was the question.
Right.
And he would not answer the question. She answered some variation along the lines, I'm proud of the work I've done for the people of Arizona. Then the moderator said, well, that's fantastic, but the question is, and will you answer this, yes or no, are you proud of the support that you've given and shown to Donald Trump? And she said, I'm proud of the work that I've done for the people of Arizona. Right. She would not go on record saying she was proud of the support of Donald Trump, which again is the first fissure. I think behind the scenes, Mitch McConnell is probably talking to her, Cory Gardner, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, of course, and there's probably maybe even a few others where in Georgia, possibly to say, if you need to, if you think it will help you, cut, bait, and run from Trump.
Right. Well, we'll have another podcast about the Senate before the election to go into some of those races and see how they're doing. And some of them might be successful, but didn't she get kind of slapped with another response when she accused Mark Kelly of taking some sort of special interest money or something? I mean,
she sure did. She talked about gun control lobby, and she said he's taken money from an outside group. And he said, you mean the one that's named after my wife, Gabby Giffords, the former congresswoman who was shot in the head? He said, yeah, gun control is a very personal issue to me, and gun safety is a very personal issue to me. And it was a great comeback because she wasn't ready. And I don't know who prepped her to go there with him, but that was not where I would have gone at all.
Yeah, I think I was in that debate. I think I would have stayed as far away from guns and gun control as I could have if I were her. Knowing that her supporters know where she stands and she doesn't have to reiterate it, and knowing the tragedy that family, and for those that don't know, Gabby Giffords was a U.S. representative from Arizona. She was holding a town hall type meeting at a mall, and a crazy gunman came up and shot her point blank almost in the head. It was touch and go for a while if she was even going to live. And Mark Kelly basically stood by her and nursed her back to health. And so, yeah, I don't think I would have brought up guns at all in that debate if I'd have been her. And whoever prepped her should have told her that.
You probably should be fired too.
Yeah. Although you never know. So, a high school football coach once told me that you can coach kids all you want to, but once the whistle blows, it's all out the window. They do what they want. And I think the same is probably true for political candidates.
Very, very true. So it was an interesting debate. Kelly seems to be in the driver's seat in that debate. He also called out, he was pretty strong on the criticism, which came up in the vice presidential debate too, of Donald Trump's words about John McCain are still haunting the Republican Party. He brought that up and asked her to repudiate it. She tried to have she said that in public and private, she's asked the president to stop saying negative things about John McCain, but I have not seen anything in public that she's ever said.
I haven't either.
And she said it really pisses her off.
Right. Yeah. And I think Kelly should have just turned to her and said, when?
Yeah.
Name the date. When have you said that publicly? I want to go check it.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the days since somebody on his staff has checked it and is coming out and saying, basically you lied. So one thing that's interesting to me about the debates this year, and maybe I'm just not recollecting as well as I should, I am getting older, but
that's true.
It seems to me like there's a tremendous amount of fact checking going on. Like one of the things, I watched the debate last night on USA Today, and where Susan Collins is the Washington bureau chief, and they did a great job on
Susan Page, not Susan Collins.
Oh, right. Sorry, Susan Page.
The memory is fading.
It is, right. So they did a great job of when things would come up, they had things ready and they put on the crawl, this was Senator Harris's stance. This was the Trump administration stance. The Trump administration did this. The Biden campaign proposed this. It was actually pretty good and pretty spot on, and let people know exactly who was telling what. And I think that, with the South Carolina debate, now with the Arizona debate, I feel like there's more of that going on to try and hold people accountable than there has been in the past. Do you get that sense as well?
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of it is just the real-time nature of social media today.
Yeah.
The fact that so many people are watching online and they have their keyboard right at their fingertips while they're watching. And so they're able to quickly and easily fact check. You mentioned South Carolina, so I'm going to try to squeeze in a little bit about South Carolina while we're talking about it. I thought we've talked about the debate before, but there was a great part of that debate that I missed because I just watched clips of it. I didn't watch the whole thing in real time. But one of the things that really stood out to me and really hit me was why Jamie Harrison, is the Democratic candidate, is resonating so well in South Carolina, which the DSCC had a poll, and I don't know the source of it, but I did see that right before we came on, where he's up by 2 points. So that's still margin of error, but who would have thought he would have ever been in the margin of error?
Right.
But one of the reasons, and I've thought about that race, I've thought, why is he resonating so well? And there was a great clip of Lindsey Graham saying, the Democratic Party, the leaders of the Democratic Party are nuts. That's what he said. They're nuts. And he goes, It's not the party that your grandparents used to be a part of. You got to stick with the Republican Party. You want conservative values. And the question was about how can you work with the other side? And that was Lindsey's answer. And when it came Jamie Harrison's time to answer, Jamie said this. He said, the reason we're in so much trouble today is things just like Senator Graham just said, calling the other side nuts. He said, we can have disagreements and still be friends and still get along. He said, when I was the chairman of the South Carolina Democratic Party, my best friend then and one of my best friends now is Matt Moore, who was the chairman of the Republican Party at the time in South Carolina. People used to call him the odd couple. And he said, we're going to have to get along and work together, and we can't have this kind of partisanship. And it was the cringe-worthy moment. You could just see Graham almost cringing because Harrison had just laid the trap and just caught him right in it and had a perfect answer. So
yeah. And what I hear when I talk to people out in the regular world is that they're ready for things to return to normal. I think the last 4 years have just been a nightmare for a lot of people. Whether it's Trump's foreign policy, which is a shambles, it's how he refers to our military. Just you name it. They're just ready for things to go back to the status quo where, the Congress works for the good of the people and tries to get things done.
How about just going back to regular order in Congress?
Right. Yeah. And I think they think that if that means they have to turn it over to one party and see what they do for a couple years, then so be it, because they're kind of sick of the way things are going.
I still think the one of the best lines was your senator when he was running for president, and not Mr. Hickenlooper, Mr. Bennett, when he said, if I'm president, you won't hear from me for days.
Right. Yeah. I really like Michael Bennett. I would like him if he was a Republican. I think he's just a top-notch politician. I think he's, if you've ever looked at the history of how he got to where he is today, he's been very, I don't want to use the word shrewd because that implies there's some shenanigans, but he's been very smart and played everything. It's almost like he had a game plan for how he wanted his life to go, and then he went out and orchestrated that game plan and made it happen. So I'm very proud to have Michael Bennet as my senator.
Yeah, I just like the thought, and I think there's a lot, to your point, I think there's a lot of Americans who like the thought of waking up some morning and not having a presidential controversy to deal with that day.
Yeah, or 50 tweets, calling people names.
Right.
Speaking of, let's transition to this. That brings us to the state of affairs of things going on in the country, and something really scary happened. The FBI arrested 6 members of a militia group. Actually, I think they arrested 13.
It's 13.
Yeah, and they charged 6 with more serious crimes, but they basically were plotting to kidnap and murder Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan governor. So tell us what you know about that, Dee.
Yeah, it's just a right wing, 2 different right wing militia groups that had met, and thank God were infiltrated by an informant with the FBI. At one point, they had a meeting in an underground bunker that could only be entered through a trap door that's covered with carpet. And upon entering, the leader of the group confiscated everyone's cell phones, but the informant was wearing a wire during this meeting. They were plotting gun training. They were plotting. They had bomb making materials. They had also staked out the governor's vacation home and also the summer residence where she was staying this summer. And it's part of this whole movement of feeling like the government's overreaching during COVID, and quite honestly, it was stoked by the president and stoked by his thing, the tweet that he sent earlier this year where he said, "Liberate Michigan." Yep. Part of their plan was they thought they were going to actually liberate Michigan. That's what they thought they were doing. And they were going to go, they had a plan to bomb a bridge close to her house as a diversion to attract law enforcement towards the bombing. And then at that point, they were going to try to do a snatch and grab where they would take her hostage. They were going to have a citizen's trial for treason. And their plan was to execute her publicly before the November 3rd election. Pretty scary stuff when you think about that. Fellow citizens in our country were contemplating this in a serious fashion.
Well, this is the kind of stuff that you see ISIS do, and it's universally condemned. And then here it is happening on our own soil. So what people like that don't realize is we do have a way for people to voice their displeasure with the government. It's called the ballot box. Right. All you need to do is get your side, to get more people that think like you to go and vote and get your people in there. And that's how you change things. And you don't do it with a gun or a bomb or a machine gun. You do it through the ballot box. You do it peacefully. That's what our country's been known for. And something like this is just, to me, is really frightening, because if you've got groups in Michigan thinking like this, then you've got groups in Colorado, California, Texas, Oklahoma, whatever state, just pick it. And there's groups like that contemplating the same thing. And
that's the scary part to me is that through this administration, they feel emboldened.
Yep.
With the comment from the first debate, stand back and stand by.
Yep.
They feel emboldened. They feel like they're actually participating in something. I'm embarrassed for our country that our leader right now didn't have the gravitas and the leadership abilities to get on the phone or to go out and make a public statement. He can record all kinds of videos with his orange and bronze colored makeup on, talking about how he feels better than he did 20 years ago, but he can't make a statement in support of an executive of one of our states. Right. I mean, that to me is mind-boggling that he hasn't spoken out strongly. As late as this morning when he did his phoner with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business News channel, he said during that interview, he called her the lockup queen. He said that, called Governor Whitmer the lockup queen, said that the way she was treating the people of Michigan was like they were basically in prison. Now, I've got to ask this question because I heard Malcolm Nance say it earlier, a former intelligence officer. He said when this kind of intelligence happens within the FBI, that the president is typically always briefed about something this serious going on in the
Yeah,
US.
you would think.
So if he was briefed about this, for him to go on and say something negative about her the day that this was going to come out just shows how infantile, juvenile, immature, and unworthy of the office that he is.
Right.
That being said, it wouldn't shock me at all if the FBI chose not to brief him on this because they weren't sure that they could trust him with the intelligence, that he wouldn't go off and run his mouth off about it. So it's embarrassing to me that he's the leader. I thought her statement this afternoon was strong and to the point, and she talked about the fact about how hard the pandemic's been. She's had to make tough decisions. She doesn't like a lot of the decisions she had to make, but she made them as best she could for all the citizens of Michigan, and that she was there for everybody in any time of their need. So
Right.
it's despicable to me.
Well, I sympathize with people that have been locked up and their livelihoods have been destroyed because of COVID. I do, but I have a hard time understanding how people could choose money over life.
Right.
You don't know, we don't know who this virus is going to infect. It doesn't look around and go, oh, you're a Democrat, so I'm going to infect all of you guys and then leave the Republicans alone. It doesn't do that.
No, it sure doesn't.
It infects whoever it sees. And in a lot of cases, at least 209,000 that we know of here in this country, it'll kill you. And so I don't understand how you could choose to say, we've got to open this thing up. We've got to go back to normal when there's no cure, there's no treatment. I mean, there's no cure for AIDS, but we have a treatment. So if you get AIDS, then you can at least have your life prolonged by taking the drug cocktail. We don't have anything like that for COVID. We just have a hodgepodge treatment protocol that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So I just don't get where people say, we need to open this up like DeSantis did today. He opened the stadiums back up to full participation. So the next time the Miami Dolphins play or the Jacksonville Jaguars, they'll have stands full of people not wearing masks and spreading this virus. And what are they going to do when all of a sudden the cases go from 2 or 3,000 a day, which is I think what they are in Florida right now, to 50,000 a day or 100,000 a day?
Well, this is exactly why the economy is still struggling today, is because in the early stages of this, we didn't have a national plan. We didn't have national leadership. We didn't have, in a lot of cases, didn't have state leadership. In Oklahoma, we've yet to have a mask mandate statewide in Oklahoma. And we're seeing our cases spike back up now. We're averaging over 1,000 a day. We've got the most hospitalizations we've ever had at any time during the pandemic. Today set the record for that. So by all these people being selfish and saying we got to get back to normal, there's not going to be any normal until we have a vaccine or a cure for this.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any normal. So you can open up the stadiums, the bars, the restaurants, anything you want at full capacity, and you're just going to have more people die.
Yep.
Just going to have more people. And to me, it's going to take sacrifice by everybody. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. The House of Representatives passed a second round of stimulus back in June. It's sat on Mitch McConnell's desk since June because they didn't want to extend unemployment payments for people because they felt like the federal subsidy for unemployment incentivized people not to work. Well,
yeah, which is crazy.
And let me tell you this too. It's crazy on one hand, but on the other hand, in some cases, people need to be incentivized not to work. And hear me out when I say that, because if people need to be able to pay their bills and stay at home and not get sick, then that's going to be the case. There's also within that package, there were plans to help small businesses stay in business so they didn't go out, to help the airlines, to help all these different industries. And now, because Mitch McConnell can't vote on that to help people, won't hold a vote on that to help people, but he can jam a Supreme Court justice through in 10 days.
Right.
It just shows what the priorities are.
Right. Well, I think, I heard Trump say the other day that the economy's doing great. Uh, and, I guess that depends on where you live. But if you're an airline flight attendant or even a second seat pilot that doesn't have tenure, most airlines are looking at massive layoffs coming here soon. And the Pelosi package had stuff in it that would address that and would help keep the airlines afloat. And there were, Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump say that's dead on arrival. Trump said we're not negotiating till after the election. Well, that's still 25 days away, and a lot of people that have seen their unemployment get cut because that got cut 6 weeks ago. They're on the verge of being booted out into the street, and
Well, and it's just it's so funny that they want to talk about the economy and the economy, yet they don't want to take the steps it takes to keep our economy going. We're going to have another stimulus package. We're going to have another semi shutdown. People don't want to hear it, but we're going to have to do it in a measured way with a mask mandate. We're going to have to keep people separated with social distancing. We're going to have to enforce it in order to get this under control. That's the best way to get the economy back. And the thing is, when you lose businesses like the airlines, okay, you talked about the employees there, but what you didn't talk about is there's a Boeing plant in Oklahoma City. How many of those people are going to lose their job? How many people at Boeing are going to lose their job in Seattle?
A lot. Yeah.
You look at a city like, I know I've got a lot of examples about Oklahoma because that's where I am, but you look at a city like Stillwater, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma State University is. Starting 2 years ago, American Airlines ran an American Eagle route out of Dallas-Fort Worth twice a day to Stillwater. Do you know what that does for an economy like Stillwater? When they're trying to attract businesses to move there, to be involved with the university, when they're trying to attract top-notch professors to work in the research labs and things like that, when they say, wow, I can actually get a commercial flight from here to DFW and I can go anywhere in the world from DFW.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Those flights have all been canceled now.
Right.
And probably not going to come back.
Well, and what people don't think about is, let's take that Boeing plant, for example. So if it goes down, so those Boeing employees, a lot of them will go out for lunch, right?
Yep.
Boeing will get parts, sheet metal or whatever from suppliers that are close by. Those guys are going to see their businesses suffer, if not completely go away. It's just a trickle effect. And for Trump to say that our economy is in great shape, I wonder if he's looking at the same news reports.
Somebody needs to tell him, and I don't think his education that he paid for at the Wharton Business School I don't think he got much of an education there. Because somebody needs to explain to him there's a difference between the economy and the stock market. Right. They're not the same thing, and they're not the same measurements. When you've got to look at other economic indicators. You can't just look at the stock market. You can't just look at the Dow Jones and say, oh, wow, stock market's up above 23. Everything must be great. Well, it must be great if you own stock in those companies that are up, not in the companies that are down, not in the, and they say, well, a lot of people have 401ks. That's great for when you retire. But if you're at an age where you're 30 or 40 years away from retiring, you can't take that money out without paying a tax penalty or a pre-withdrawal penalty on it. Right. And in that case, you would need it for a medical emergency because Obamacare is gone. And I mean, it's on and on and on. The guy just doesn't understand daily economics.
Well, it's looking more and more like November 3rd, the country's going to help him understand by putting him out of a job. So, we'll see how that goes. So
we've got, what do we just say? We have 27 days, 26 days, something like that.
I think it's 25 days now. I think we're 25 days out, 25 or 26.
Well, it is October. We did a podcast earlier about October surprises. So he was calling on Twitter this morning for Attorney General Barr to start indicting President Obama. He should indict former Vice President Biden, Hillary Clinton. They should all be indicted and locked up. And so we know what happened last time. We know that the head of the FBI came out with his letter about Hillary Clinton's investigation at the last minute.
Right.
Well, so it's going to be an interesting few weeks.
It is. Like we said before, it's going to be a long and bumpy ride. And we'll be here for you we'll have more podcasts talking about the issues and debating. We're going to have some special guests we've lined up, and it's going to be a pretty interesting time right up until the election, and we look forward to having you guys along with us. So that's it for the GD report for tonight. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on our next one.
Everybody have a great one and stay safe. Remember to vote.
Yep, remember to vote. Good night, folks.